Phelan was being tightly marked there by the referee, and now the counter's on. And referee Madley has played his part in this. Isidore leading the Sunderland charge. Beautiful finish. But uproar at the MKM Stadium. But Sunderland do not care. They have taken.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Roker Report podcast in association with the Sunderland Community Soup Kitchen. It's Gav and you join us as Sunderland go back to the top of the table with a fine 1-0 victory away at Hull City. We are back at the top of the table after being off the top of the table for what a day, but it's nice. It's always nice to be top of the table. 2 points clear after 10 games and absolutely loving life and totally ready to get carried away, because I think 10 games is fair enough. We can get carried away a little bit now, can't we? Surely. Joining me is Chris. Hello, mate.
All right, mate. All right, 50 seconds in. I think you've mentioned top of the table about 5 times.
Yeah. Why not, eh? We might never get back there, so, make the most of it.
Exactly. All right. Well, it's funny. I was talking to people on the school run this morning in Sheffield, and like they were asking about us and all this sort of stuff, and they were surprised. But we're talking about teams like Coventry and stuff like this, and when you think about where they are at the minute, and you just look at us, I mean, it's just, it just, I don't know, you just feel like the bubble's got to burst at some point, but we keep on marching on.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, isn't it? Like last year, everybody was saying that about Ipswich.
Yeah.
They started the season just like we have, absolutely crazy, loads of points on the board at this point, and we're all sat there going, well, it's going to collapse at some point, surely it can't carry on this, and it did.
Yeah. Well, I admit they made me look stupid last year, because all throughout last season I was like, it'll never last. And I've got 2 good mates, season ticket holders at Ipswich, and I was telling them, I was like, didn't get too excited, lads, eh? And yeah, I looked stupid at the end.
Could be us this year, you never know. But it was one of them games. I think when I think back to the seasons where we've got promoted, there was always games like this where it was tight and nippy away from home, and something crazy happens, and then in 20 years, you're still talking about the goal, and I just think this was one of them kinds of games. You never. If we do somehow get promoted this season, this will be one of the ones where you're like, remember that away day at Hull? Because it was a slog at times. We had to scrap. We got a little bit of luck thrown in there with certain things happening, but so did they. But the goal, I mean, let's talk about that off the top. The goal from Wilson Isidore. How many times you watched that back today? I've at least 300. I can't stop watching it.
Well, again, you've mentioned you did top of the table 5 times in the first 50 seconds, and you've just done three promotions or promoted in the last 30 seconds. But but it needed it. It was one of these games, and I tell you what, this game sums up the championship. This is the championship where Hull are a mid-table side. All right, they might have aspirations of getting there or thereabouts in terms of the playoffs, like most clubs in the championship. But this game is exactly how the championship is. It's like we might be top of the league or whatever, but this game was so close, and it was based on moments. Like this game, like the 3 points could have went either way.
Yeah,
probably. Look, if you go on the game as a whole, a draw would have probably been a fair result, because it was for the most part it was a bit of a nothing game, but it needed a moment like this. It needed something, a set piece, a free kick, a penalty, a decision, referees trying to meg themselves or backheel it into our path and all that. But I mean, they were going on about it, and I'd love to hear what you've got to say about it, because in my view, with the corner with the referee thing, right, like, all right, we would be going off it as well if the referee got in the way like this. But if you take a step back a little bit and actually just watch it again, which we've watched it over and over and over again, like, I can't even remember who it is who gets the ball from a Hull point of view, but even when he receives the ball, he still has an option to pass it to his right, pass it back to his left, or pass it back. But he tries to do a stupid turn, and he loses it, quite rightly, because he did something stupid, not because of what the referee did. Like, he had time to sort it out. He could have just whacked it straight back to the keeper if he wanted to play it safe. If he was like, ref's in the way, we're going to have to start again. But he decided to do a stupid turn in the middle of the pitch. And the other thing was, Hull left themselves so open at the back. I mean, he was almost the last man, because when Dan Neil popped the ball out, that was kind of he was straight through on goal. I mean, and he had to run so far. I mean, it sounds daft that you say, oh, like a player has to run that far. But when you're running with the ball that far with someone on you, it's a different matter of just running that distance. Like you're actually knackered when you run with the ball under pressure for that long. And for him to get that far and then do what he did at the end, I mean, I think actually he's in that one moment, he's just showed how classy he is as a player.
Oh, yeah. I think it got better and better every time I watched it. I watched it in the pub, and the first time I saw it, obviously I thought, oh, good goal, but you don't realise just how good it is till you see it slowed down close up from different angles, because there is a point where the Hull player is caught up to him and he's fully alongside him, and he probably should stop Isidore from getting anywhere near.
Well, he shrugged him off. He had to shrug him off on the edge of the box.
Yeah. And then he does that little sort of shimmy shoulder drop thing. Yeah. And then the finish, he had no right to finish it like that. Yeah. None. Because the angle, it's narrowing down, and he's, you think, oh, well, it's really difficult from that perspective to try and even lift the ball, and he does it, and it's just an unbelievable goal. I think it's one of them ones where that's then down to just pure ability rather than instinct ability. And, he hasn't got time to really think about it, so he has to just do what comes natural to him.
But for good strikers, they're the good ones.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think at one point the keeper thought, I've got this. And then he just did that. He just dinked it over him. And I think obviously he knew what he was doing, but as soon as that ball popped, as soon as the goalkeeper went down, for what good strikers do, made his decision up for him. But he still had to do it. He still had to do it perfectly and dink it over him, because, like you said, on that angle. But the thing is, from my point of view, if a ball drops to a striker like that in the box and he dinks it over the keeper, brilliant, fantastic finish. But the thing is, that's at the end of running 70 yards with a player on him, which he has to shrug off, and he's literally sprinted with the ball for 70 yards. Which
in the first 10 yards of that, by the way, the acceleration, because the Hull player had 10 yards on him. Yeah. So the speed he has to go at just to make up that space to get onto the ball. Ridiculous.
Well, exactly. And you're always slower when you're running with the ball than somebody who's just sprinting alongside you, and he still managed to shrug him off. But I mean, like I said, I think that's his kind of breakthrough moment. I mean, he's looked good. He's looked kind of. You see, there's a really good player there. But I mean, this is his moment. I mean, he's kind of broke through that, and he just kind of, he's starting to show us how good he is now, really getting into his stride.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of people say like they didn't realise he was that quick, because we haven't really seen him open his legs like that and get. But apparently, it's something they've been working on. He was told to do that. He was told to make sure he was on his toes in a way every time they were ploughing forward like that, because I think, obviously, looking back at the footage, they must have seen Hull do that. They leave loads of space, which we kind of guessed, didn't we, before the game? We knew they were going to be one of them types of teams where they do go all out attack and pile forward.
Yeah, well, we've got to talk about, in that sense, we've got to talk about Dan Neil's part in it. Because, I mean, for him, for that corner to come out there, 10 yards outside the box, and Dan Neil was on it. So even though, I mean, yeah, okay, but look, again, we wouldn't be best pleased if the referee had done that. But again, if you look at it from almost an outsider's point of view, okay, we benefited from it. But like I said, Dan Neil still had to do his job. If Dan Neil wasn't there, then nothing happened there, and the player had received the ball, and even though the referee was 2 yards away from him, he could have, it would have made his job a lot easier. But their player still had a few options on, and he made the wrong choice, and Dan Neil was on him enough not only to nick the ball, but nick the ball so Isidore could run onto it, and it was. I mean, I still don't think Dan Neil was good. He wasn't fantastic, but in this sense, he read the game brilliantly. He knew exactly what was going to happen. Ball was straight out. He was on it. And like I said, he still had to do his job regardless of what had happened before that.
Yeah, and I was going to come back to that. I agree with you with the way that the reaction from Hull, I can't believe it. I can in a way, because I think, it's easy. It's but it's easy to put the blame on the ref, isn't it?
Yeah.
Particularly from their manager's point of view, because he knows it's controversial. It takes the pressure off the player, puts it all on the ref. They'll be going in blaming the referee, and they're not blaming the lad who lost the ball. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
you're right.
Exactly.
We would be pissed off. It happened to us, by the way, in the first half twice, where the ref got in the way.
Oh, yeah, he did it. He did it 3 times in the game, didn't he? Where he got in the way. One with Dan Neil, where Dan Neil just ran into him.
But yeah, I think it's just easy from a whole perspective to kind of blame the referee, isn't it? But you're right. He had options. The easiest options he had were left and right of him. All he had to do was slide the ball 5 yards. He tries to do a Cruyff turn and gets caught.
Oh, exactly. Exactly.
I do understand in that moment, it must be hard to be decisive because you're already disrupted by the referee. But you're a professional footballer.
Yeah, exactly.
And if it wasn't a referee and it was your own player or a Sunderland player, what would you do? You'd play the ball 5 yards. You wouldn't try and do a Cruyff turn. I don't know what he was trying to do. But yeah, it kind of suits them to blame us, really, and blame the ref.
I was just about to say, as the whole manager, and you would expect any manager to do that, actually, he's protecting his player. I mean, behind the scenes, he might be still saying, don't do a Cruyff turn when we've only got one person back, behind the scenes. But in public, he's going to say, oh, well, the lad was stopped by the referee and it was all the referee's fault. And you'd expect a manager to do that, to be fair. But if that had happened to us, and let's say, look, I'm just picking up a name out, but let's say it was Dan Neil, just because we mentioned him earlier, and he tried to do that turn, I'd be on here now saying, okay, the ref slightly got in his way, but what's he doing that for? I'd still be critical of the player.
Yeah, and I don't know if you heard him as well, talking about the red card that wasn't. He was adamant that Mepham should have been sent off.
I'm not sure about the red card, but I don't know. Well, look, bottom line is it did hit his arm.
Yeah.
How much he knew about it and how much he meant to do it is a different matter.
Yeah, he's went to head it, hasn't he?
He's gone to head it and he's misjudged it.
Yeah.
I don't think he's actually. I don't think he was kind of that skillful to let it land on his arm.
No.
Because actually it would have been ridiculous for him to do it, because actually the ball was going through at the keeper. If he was going to do that and try and handball it because he thought they were going to get a chance, it would have been ridiculous. Bit of a rush of blood to the head, but it didn't feel like that. But to be fair, on another day, we might have not gotten away with that. So we did get away with it, really.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of teams saying we're lucky. I saw a lot of Leeds fans who were watching the game saying, bloody Sunderland lucky again, But I'll tell you what, the amount of times in the last couple of years in particular in this league where we've got no luck whatsoever. I'm not going to sit and say anything about it. I just think, well, so what? It evens itself out eventually. But I just think it was convenient for their manager to kind of shift the blame. Ultimately, really, they didn't really create much. I know they had a lot of the ball and they hit the post with that one shot, but Patterson didn't have loads and loads of saves to make. The main save Patterson had to make was the one which deflected off his own player. And it was a hell of a save, by the way. I don't think Hull were too bad. I just don't think... It's not like they can sit there and go, well, we were really hard done because we created loads of chances and... test our keeper a bit more and you might have more of an argument here.
Yeah, this is what I was saying earlier on, that it was a game that neither side really made chances. Neither side really stuck out. I mean, early on, we had a really good start and I thought, we're going to boss this. And then Hull got back into it, to be fair to them. But it was one of those games, two sides where there were... And it was interesting, actually, because both managers were doing something very similar, where both sides, it was like a game of cat and mouse with the press, where Hull stood on the ball. And it was more difficult for them to do it at home, but they stood on the ball and waited for us to press them, and then tried to play when we pressed them, and we did the same. And it ended up being a really bizarre game where both sides were kind of keeping the ball and waiting for the other side to come on them so they could create space in the final third. And in the end, it just, like, both sides really cancelled each other out. And there was, I mean, in the first half, the big worry for us was getting caught on the break, because we actually seemed to be committing too many players forward. And there was 3 or 4 times where we had to get back into shape, and we did well to do it, but we were taking risks away from home, which I'm not saying is a bad thing necessarily, but it was just one of those things where if we were going to get caught, that's where it was going to happen. But otherwise, it was both sides really cancelled each other out, and that's why it was going to come down to a moment of brilliance, a set piece, like I said, referees doing a dance in front of a Hull City player. But it was going to come down to something stupid like that, and it did. And I mean, and the other thing I kind of want to get into as well was, like, I'm a bit worried kind of where the chances were going to kind of come from, because looking at Patrick Roberts on the right-hand side, it all got a bit samey in the end.
Yeah.
And you kind of you are worried about kind of his form, and And it was interesting listening to the manager during the week where he was talking about getting the triangles around him, and it didn't quite happen this time. He was left exposed where it was too many one-on-ones, and then he ran out of ideas. And when Chris Rigg gets across to him, when Hume gets on the overlap, that's when you see Patrick Roberts being able to do things because he's got options. And unfortunately, that it was a bit of a weak link, that right-hand side.
Yeah, I think you're reading my mind. That was the next thing I was going to talk about was the wingers. I think, to be fair as well, to Roberts, he wasn't the only one. I think Mundle, probably his worst game for us. I just don't think anything he tried came off either. Yeah. Although it wasn't like with Roberts where I think most of the play went down the right-hand side, so Roberts saw a lot more of the ball. But when Mundle did have it, he didn't really do a lot. But it's all right because he's been so good for us, you know. But Roberts, to me, it was kind of like a Patrick Roberts of old performance, wasn't it? Just running into trouble. And when he was, like, for me, he does so well because he's got all that pace and trickery. He gets across the sort of the 18-yard box and he gets into good positions. And I sometimes think, God, if that was Mundle in that position, we'd probably get a good shot off or even score. Roberts, you never feel like he's going to score when he's in that position. He never feels a threat.
Yeah. And when we play sides like this who are clued up and they've done their homework, once Roberts touches that ball inside, 3 players come out to him because they know he wants to bend the ball into the kind of far corner, and you can see, and that odd time where he goes down the line, they don't mind letting him do that. But and it all comes down to getting players around him. You get the players around him where he can play the little 1-2s and he can play the one-touch stuff, and that he loves that, and he's able to find the spaces and he gets people in. You put Patrick Roberts one-on-one, and he's not doing it at the minute. And I just think teams are becoming wise to it and doubling up on him, and it's as simple as that.
So I guess that kind of leads us into looking ahead a bit, because obviously we've got Luton on Wednesday. Would you make any changes? Because I'm it's one of them, innit? I would actually really like to see Tommy Watson play, but I don't know if I see him. I don't know if I see him making changes. It's weird, innit? Because we keep expecting, we're looking at these games as sort of taking a wider viewpoint on things and going, oh, well, surely he's going to make changes because we've got just so many games coming up. Yeah. But he hasn't done it yet, so it's hard to really judge. Like, if it was me, I'm thinking, well, he took Roberts off in the game, so that probably means he's going to start, doesn't it, the next game?
Well, it was for Brown, so I think it was kind of a shoring up thing rather than it was like 83rd minute. He's, it wasn't like for like. It wasn't bringing another attacking player on.
Rigg went out there, didn't he? Rigg kind of swapped over.
Actually, I quite like Rigg out wide. Actually, he did that Megs, and he took a couple of. Actually, there was half a shout for a penalty. Actually, when Rigg took a couple of players on from the byline. But yeah, I mean, it's one of them. If it isn't broke, do you fix it? But this is the thing. And I suppose obviously it's one for the manager, but it's. What is the issue? Is it the form of Patrick Roberts, or is it not getting players around him? And I actually think it's not getting players close enough to him, because I can't remember who it was now. There was a team at home a couple of weeks ago where we started off. It was before the international break, and we started off, and Chris Rigg was making runs past them on the inside. Hume was running down the outside, and Patrick Roberts just looked dangerous every time he had the ball, because he had 2 passes on, at least 2 passes, and he was able to come inside, he was able to go down the line, he was able to run at people with options. And when that's on, we all know how good he is. But I just felt like he was given the ball against Hull, and it was kind of, right, go on and take a couple of players on. And he just looks a bit lost and a bit stuck when it's like that. So if we think that he needs to be taken out, if the manager thinks, well, that's kind of not good enough, and he thinks, well, Mundle's got both of those sides to him, and maybe there's someone else. I mean, but then again, who does he look to bring it in? Does he put Rigg on the right, and does he bring Brown in? Because Luton's a tough place to go. I mean, they're unbeaten in their last 3. I know they lost the first 2 at home this season, but they're unbeaten in that they've got like 7 points out the last 9 at home. So they've turned their home form around after a bad start, and we all know how tough it is. When Luton are going to get going at some point this season, they're not going to stay down there for that long. And it looks like they've kind of got some momentum. Great result against Watford. I mean, we were talking about that, before the last game, saying, you know, what they could go either way after the derby. If they got hammered against Watford, they were going to be down and we're there for the taking. But they've come out, and that's going to be a massive lift. That result, so it's a tough one. That he might be thinking, do I bring Brown in and have a push Rig out wide and have a bit more kind of steel in the middle?
Yeah, well, I think this is one of them games where we've maybe got to consider what Luton are going to do, because they're at home. And I watched a bit of that game at the weekend with Watford, and they didn't look like a team who were struggling. They looked good.
Yeah.
They were exactly what you expect from Luton. Really physical up front. The front two battered Watford's defence. Absolutely battered them. And just when I say battered, literally the ball was going up there, and they were physically more dominant, and they just looked like they wanted it. And like, we know what Luton are like. You know, two wing backs who like to whip balls in, and you know, Victor Moses is a good player. I know he's a little bit older now, but now that he's got some games under his belt, he'll probably be one of the best players at this level in his position. Even still at his age, you know, Alfie Doughty on the other side. So I think we've got to consider Luton. I wouldn't be surprised if he did that. You know, we've just kind of mentioned it there, but maybe moving Rig wide, bring Roberts out for Brown, and have just. I don't think we lose too much. And obviously you're moving Rig around, but he's played that position. He can do a job there, and it gets Brown into the team, which I think we might need. I just think we might need his steel in the middle, a little bit more experience and presence.
Well, yeah, I mean that's what, you know, we were talking about a minute ago, and the other option, and it depends on how he is, because like I said, with the games coming up, do you put Rig on the bench, keep it tight, and then maybe on the hour mark, Rig comes on and, you know, changes the game somehow if you keep it tight, and, you know, if it's 0-0, 1-0, you know, whatever, and then, you know, or if you go goal behind, you've got Chris Rig on the bench to produce something.
Well, it's interesting he got a full 90. How often does that happen?
Yeah.
You know?
That's it.
That might have been with a view to that, you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's an interesting one.
I'd be surprised if Rig played all of these games. I mean, I can't remember what it was we were talking last time. It's like 6 games in 20 odd days or something, 21 days, something like that. I mean, you'd be surprised if Rig played 90 minutes in every single one. So, yeah, I mean, that's the change you'd be looking at. He's certainly not going to change the back five. I mean, that stays the same. Neil stays in there. And by the way, I mean, just while we're on kind of going through the team, again, I've been banging this drum this season, but very, very quietly, Job is just being a proper player this season. He's I think we've put him in a position where I'm not necessarily sure if he had the choice. I'm not sure this would be his choice of where he play or his role in the team. But I tell you what, I think it's his best position by a country mile. I think the way he's reading the game, the way he's just nicking the ball, the way he's getting his body in the way he's turning on the ball and taking 2 of their players out of the game because he's deep enough to do that, and then he can stride forward and he's making some runs forward, kind of, you know, at times beyond the wingers and beyond the striker. And I just think he's almost been given the freedom of the pitch to say, you know, do what you're comfortable with, and I just think he is, and he's finding himself this season. I think last season you saw a player who didn't know what type of player he was, and he was still working it out. And people were thinking, well, he's got to be an attacking player, just look at him. And he's not. And he's this season, he's finding out exactly what he is and who he is. And I just think he's now one of the most important players in our team, the way we play. He's been absolutely brilliant. And I think he's just getting better and better. So, yeah. And then you look at Mundle, and, you know, Mundle's been producing lately, and obviously after Isidore's goal, you're not changing that. So the only place you'd be looking at Roberts or Rig. But having said that, I do think there's an element of, I don't think this manager likes to change it for the sake of changing it. I don't think he's too much about rotating things out just for like, oh, you know, well, I need to because we've got a game in 3 days. If one of the lads are taking a knock, then fair, you saw that with Ballard. Then, you know, he'll whip them straight out. But I wouldn't. I think he'll go in with the same 11. But if anywhere, it's going to be kind of Rig or Roberts.
Yeah, just on Job, I think the big thing for me, he just looks so much more disciplined without the ball. Like, there was times last year where I just don't, and I think it was just a mixture of being really young and not really knowing his best position. But he wasn't as disciplined as he is now out of possession. Like, if you look, he's a grafter. Like, he's a proper grafter. He mucks in when we don't have the ball. And when he does have the ball, he's got a lot of quality. There's one thing I think he's added to his game, which I've noticed, and I think a lot of people have, to be fair. He's got this ability when he's got the ball to just stick his arse out and his elbows out and turn, and they can't get near him. He's just too big. And that's something you generally don't see in teenagers. You don't see that. That's something they pick up later in their career when they've got 200 odd games under their belt. Yeah. He's already using his frame, which I don't think he was doing much last year. To me, that makes him invaluable because there aren't many players who can do that. To be fair, there's not many players his size going around him. He's a big boy, but a lot of them don't use it. How many times have we seen, like, I always think of players like Ashley Fletcher and Connor Wickham, big lads, big strapping lads, and you think, Mason Burstow last year, they've got all this size and they just can't use it. And it's nice to see a player who does at Sunderland. And that's the little thing he adds that the rest of them can't. Because Dan Neil's not a big lad, and he just doesn't put himself about like that. He's a technician, really. And then Riggs just a little magician, isn't he? And he does put himself about, but he's not big. So that, I think the big problem we've got at the minute is when you think about the midfield options, Salis is still injured. Alexic they're holding off on for some reason, just bedding him in. We don't see much of Abdullah Bar anymore. Brown's having to bide his time, but I don't think he's a physical player. I think he's more of a rig type. So it's like, well, how much can you realistically change? Because I was looking at the bench options from the game at the weekend, and there's Alan Brown and Aaron Conley came on. Then you've got Rusin, Mua, Oshish, Alexic, Hjelder, Watson, Johnson. We haven't got a ton of options to change. So I think if it's going to be, anything, it's going to be, like I say, possibly Rig moving into the right wing slot and Brown coming in, or Brown coming in for Rig, as you said.
Yeah. I
would love to see Watson start a game, but I think if he's going to start a game, that's more likely to come when maybe we play Oxford, somebody at home, when there's a bit more time. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't, and to be fair, they've had 2 weeks off as well, haven't they? Let's be honest. Yeah. So they shouldn't be knackered. Even though it's a short turnaround, they shouldn't be knackered. So I can't see him changing much, just given the way he is. I think this manager likes to keep it as it is. But yeah, I mean, the game's going to be tough, as we've said. What you thinking? Another tight away performance? I reckon it's going to be 1-0 either way kind of game, me. I don't see us drawing it.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be similar to kind of the game against Hull. Looking at the Championship, you look at the fixtures coming up, and you look at away games at Luton, QPR, Preston in the next 4 games, and we've got that the game, obviously the home game against Oxford, like you mentioned, like in amongst that. But I mean, even though those clubs might be they're not high flying or anything like that, all of those away games are tough games, and they're going to be close. And it's like this one. It's like, and I think I said this before, that I've just got this feeling we've got another gear to move into. And we're at the minute we're playing these games where we're keeping it tight, we're not giving anything away, and then we're waiting for that moment, like we did and we won the game against Hull with that moment where we get a chance, we take it, we get the goal, and we're so organised, we're able to kind of sit on that and see it out quite comfortably, actually, in the end. But and I think with these away games coming up, that's what we're going to need. And I think you'll see the pattern of play that it's keeping it tight, waiting for our moment, getting that goal, getting that half chance. But these are tough games. I'm not kind of expecting kind of 9 points out the next 3 away games. I think, they're all tough games, and it's going to come on moments like this game. We could have easily come out of that away game against Hull with nothing, quite easily. They hit the post, that referee could have given that handball. Like I said, these moments just go your way sometimes, and you're good enough and you're organised enough to keep it tight to stay in the game. So it's going to be, and Luton's going to be the same again. I think it's going to be tight. I remember, the 2 draws I think we had against them in the non-playoff games. Then the playoff games were tight, and they've pretty much got the very similar squad to what they went up with. So that they're just kind of organised, and we know what to expect from Luton. So, yeah, it's going to be one of them. It's going to be tight. It's going to be a bit scrappy. I mean, you're looking at a 0-0, a 1-0, 1-1, something like that.
Yeah, I'm thinking...
Get splinters in my arse for not picking one.
1-0. 1-0 Sunderland. We'll go with another Isidore goal.
Are we going to turn into, the old Arsenal? George Graham's Arsenal?
I'd take it if it gets to a promoter. Yeah, so 1-0 I'm going with. Yeah, I fancy us, I really do, but I just think... going to be tough. I think Luton are one of them games where, especially Luton away, where you look at it on pitch and you say, oh God, you just don't want to go, do you? It's like a horrible game. But like I say, I said this to somebody earlier, we're top of the league. So, you've got to start thinking, like, we're top of the league. They're going to be more scared of us than we are of them. And that, let's focus on that. Let's just make sure we go there and play with confidence and play with a bit of swagger. And I think we will. I just think it's going to be one of them where we've got to graft. But I think there's been a lot of games this season where it's been tight and our work's got us through it. And I think it did at Hull.
Yeah. And
I think if we're going to win here, it's going to be the same.
You know what? I think the slight advantage we've got at the minute is if you look at, we're obviously we'll say it again, we're top of the league. Behind us, we've got Burnley, Leeds, Sheffield United. You look at those three clubs, obviously just come down, and they need to be there. I mean, with finances, with wages they've got, with the structure of their club just coming down from the Premier League, they've been paying Premier League wages. They've got a lot. They're trying to keep players on their books. And they need to be there. There's pressure on those clubs that they have to be in the mix. We weren't expected to be in the mix. Everything that, the way I'm looking at it, everything that's happening now in terms of us being top of the league is a bonus, and I'm just enjoying it. And if, there's no pressure, we're kind of enjoying each game, because if we lose one or two, like, we're not going. It's not the end of the world. Whereas if Burnley, Leeds and Sheffield United lose one or two, it's like the end of the world. And I think because of that, the pressure's taken off the players a little bit, because this wasn't. We're not kind of expected to run away with the league. We're not expected to win the league. We weren't even expected to be in the mix of the top two. Really, people were saying, but we could finish anywhere between 12th and playoffs, and people didn't really know what to expect of us. And because of this start, I just don't think that we've got the pressure that some of those other clubs have up there, because they're desperate to get promoted again. And yes, okay, it'd be brilliant. We'd love it. We'd really enjoy it. But the position, the structure of the club that we're at, we're just enjoying it.
Yeah. Well, we'll be enjoying it even more if we get 3 points again at Luton. So we'll be back after that one. Thanks, mate. Again, another good crack.
No worries. All right.
Cheers to the listeners. Thank you for joining us. Like I said on the end of the last one, if you haven't already, pre-order the, what's it called again? Got my words mixed up there.
Mackem Cookbook.
The Mackem Cookbook. Couldn't get my words out. The Mackem Cookbook. Pre-order that from the Your Love Supreme website. It's £15. Proceeds go to the Southern Community Soup Kitchen as part of this year's fundraiser. It would help if I knew the name of it, wouldn't it? Keep that in, Sean. I'll get better at it, trust us. As we build up in December, you'll not hear the last of it. But yeah, make sure you pre-order it from there, and you can also donate as well. There's a little donate button on the website as well, which you can add if you want to add a little bit more in. It all goes to a brilliant cause. We will be back after the game with another pod. They're coming thick and fast, these games, so we'll be in your lugs more than you can be asked. You'll be sick of hearing us. Oh dear, yes. Cheers, mate. Thanks very much. Thanks, everyone. And we'll catch you later.